Hello, and thank you for joining me. My name is Michael McCarthy, and I'm the very proud president and CEO at the Financial Consulate. And we are gathering today to talk about a topic that is a heavy topic for a lot of parents and grandparents and children. And it's about college education and some of the decisions that they'll need to make under or on deciding on what that's going to look like. So the topic of today's webinar is calculating the ROI of a college education. And why is this so important? Well, I think a lot of us have heard in the news lately that, outstanding federal loan portfolios over 1.6 trillion. The 43.4 million borrowers have federal student loan debt. The lifetime average return on investment for a bachelor's degree is 287.7%, but in the first 10 years, it's actually a negative 41% on the average, as many degree holders don't see a return until they're 15 years out. Average federal student loan debt is at $37,000, but it might be higher than that when you consider private loans. And prior to the COVID pandemic response of halting defaults, 11.1% of student loans were 90 days or more delinquent. So, it's a pretty big national news topic, but for most of us, it's a pretty big personal topic. I know it's a personal topic for me. I've got a little bit of time before I have to have these conversations, but we're starting to have them now. I've got two girls, Kerrigan and Devin, and they're pistols. Kerrigan has already decided on a career in the sciences, and I'm sure she'll want to go to the most expensive places. So I'm preparing myself now for this conversation by talking to all of you. So let's start off by describing what ROI stands for. It stands for return on investment. This is an important thing in our business, but return on investment can be calculated in most scenarios when there's a financial decision to be made. So you take the benefit or the return of what you're hoping to get, and you divide it by the cost of getting it. That's then expressed as a percentage. So when it comes to a college degree, what you're trying to assess is what are the additional potential earnings that you'll earn over your lifetime and over your career based on the cost of education. And cost of education is a lot of things. It's room, board, it's the tuition, it's the books, but it's also the time. How many years are you going to spend spending money and learning versus making money? So all those things are considerations. In general, a bunch of people, this is from educationaldata.org, have calculated various return on investments for the average bachelor's degree, average master's degree, average doctoral degree. They've also gone and figured out, well, what's the average time before the amount of money you've spent and the amount of money you've not earned catches up with the amount of money you're earning. And that's here. But really, all this data is kind of pointless because between bachelor's degrees, there's huge differences. This next slide only shows a few types of careers, but the orange represents a negative ROI, meaning that had the person gone out and earned out of the average wages of a non-college educated person, they would have made more money over their lifetime than had they chosen the career they did. And these are some of the degree pursuits that produce better numbers for this from a standpoint of ones that tend to have lower paying salaries. But you can see even between them, there's a huge difference. I know a lot of people that have had to make the decision between visual arts and music degrees and education degrees, because that's one of those common kind of switches that happens is, okay, I'm pursuing fine arts. Ooh, I just realized how much this is going to cost. I'm going to switch and teach fine arts instead. There's a lot of data out there, and I'll try not to bore you. But the most cost-efficient degrees have been in computer and information sciences. Business, there's a lot of examples out there. Business finance had a 710% return on investment. Business accounting, 547%. Electrical engineering, 517%. Consumer science And home economics degrees, lowest lifetime ROI at negative 70.6%. So really, this is a bunch of boring data. What's the point? What am I trying to communicate? I'm trying to communicate that looking at the financial aspects of the education decisions is an important aspect of looking. It's an important thing to tackle with and to explore. Some more examples in that. Electrical engineering degrees, return on investment. In the first 10 years, 3.5%, but over 40 years, 580%. General studies, you can see it's negative for a good part of the career, and liberal arts degrees negative for a good part of the career on the average of students that came out with that. Regardless of what you choose, and regardless of getting stuck on this is what I'm going to do, I want to pursue this, there are still decisions you can make to help improve your return on investment or the financial aspect of this decision you're making. So 4-year accounting degree, you can go get that at the University of Miami. And if you're out of state, that's going to cost you $214,728. You will have a fantastic tan. Or you can say, all right, I want to do that, but I don't want to take the risk of how long it's going to take me to make that money back up. What if I did my in-state Towson University? $40,792. You're going to close that gap imminently faster. So 4-year educational degree, I want to be a teacher. It's what I've always wanted to be. I've loved my teachers growing up. So we could go to Vassar. That's going to be around $250,000. Berkeley, hear a lot of people talking about the college experience at Berkeley, $96,360. University of Maryland, if you're in state, $43,116. So not just choosing what degree or what career you're going to pursue, but how much are you going to pay to pursue that? But a truth that I must share is that while this webinar, this presentation is about calculating the return on investment of an educational degree, it's actually incredibly difficult to actually calculate that. What I'm trying to communicate is that it's not as much about coming up with a certain return. It's not about, figuring out what's going to have the highest return. None of those things are going to be possible to fully calculate. The important part is taking the emotional and the social and the life experience goals and making sure that you're also tying the financial aspect in, and you're making a decision that you have fully explored all of the different sides of the decision. One of the things that you should come away from this presentation knowing is that this decision about what education to pursue and where to pursue it is likely going to be one of the largest financial decisions a student ever makes. So again, I'm just trying to sell on the importance of understanding the decision. So Mike, I've just told you that, hey, it's actually really hard to calculate the ROI, and it's incredibly speculative, and it may not be representative. So what do we do instead? I think the best way for parents and grandparents and students to make sure that they've looked at the roundness, the fullness of the decision-making process is to create a post-college budget. So the post-college budget is going to include the loan payments, the living expenses, any other expectations you have on what life's going to be like when you walk away with that 4-year degree or whatever degree you're pursuing. And then compare that to a realistic expectation of the after-tax expected wages. I say after tax because Financial Consulate has employed over the years a good number of just out of college graduates. And I think many people would be surprised how many college graduates come out, are told a certain salary or compensation, and don't realize how many things are going to come out of that. So how do you do this? What do you need? So the first thing you're going to have to do is, as the student, is considering their options on what degrees. You have to come up with what the most likely future career is. I know if you get a fine arts degree, one of the potential careers is that you may become the most world-renowned concert violinist of all time and sell out concerts all over the globe. But I think we'd have to agree that that's not the most likely outcome. So this is a bit speculative again, but work together and look at the degree, and maybe even do some Google searching. What's the most common career for someone with this degree? Once you have that, there's great tools online. The first one is salary.com. You can go to the For You area and then the salary calculator, and you can put in what the career is. So for today's example, I'm going to use elementary school music teacher. So this is just the generic result, but you can dial that down into location, years of experience. If you just graduated college, years of experience will be 0 to 1. And any other information that might localize your estimate, but then you're going to get an estimate of what that future salary might be. So the next exercise to do is head over to Smart Asset, and they have some great tools. And one of those is a calculator for an estimated take-home pay. So I've taken that salary from salary.com. I've entered it in here. And then on the left-hand side, I've gone ahead, you can't see it here, but I've put in some expectations about pre-tax deductions. So depending on what your career is, you may have a copay for your health insurance. You may have a copay for maybe even dental and vision. You may also say, hey, I want to make sure I've always understood the importance of saving. So I want to at least get my 3% match from my 401k. So I'm going to have that withheld. You can work with parents to help you build these expectations, but you put all that information in there and then you come out with your estimated pay. In this case, I used semi-monthly because some teachers prefer to get paid only during the teaching months. Others prefer to get paid through the whole time. So we're looking at an example where you're getting paid the whole time throughout the year, not just during the school year. So the next thing we got to do is figure out what that expected debt we were going to have is. This part of the conversation is going to open up some other parts of the conversation. Is there 529 money? Are parents or grandparents expecting to contribute? What does that look like? Is the contribution the same no matter the degree? All of these other things that I won't get into today, but will play into this conversation. So once you've gone through and you've figured out, what money you have on your own to contribute towards the education while you're doing it, whether or not you're living at home or you're living at the school and you have room and board or rent, how much of that are you going to borrow? All these things, should be able to help you figure out what your expected end of the 4 years student debt might be. Everything we're doing here, it should be said, we're just trying to gain a better understanding. We are not going to come out the other end of this with a perfectly calculated, sense of the future, but we're doing an exercise to educate ourselves and to bring things into perspective. So I have put $40,792 into our elementary school music teacher's debt. He or she lived at home and mom and dad paid for food and everything, but they didn't have any money to contribute towards tuition. So we borrowed the full 4-year cost of Towson University education program into there. And we pumped that out. So just so everyone knows, federal loans are allocated or amortized over 10 years. Smart Asset gave us an interest rate. So we're looking at $426 a month. So now we know take home pay, and we know the servicing cost of the debt, the loan payments. So then we're going to take all that and build the budget. Now, what I have up here is a template available from Microsoft that you can download from them. There's many online tools, mint.com, ynab.com, you need a budget. That's what that spells out to. There's also just a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet that you make yourself. I like this one, and I'll try to find a way to send this link out, but I like this one because it is showing you, it's reminding you of things you might have forgotten about. Like, oh, well, I do want to have a gym membership. Mom and Dad, you're not going to keep paying for the gym membership? Oh, well, I guess I'll need the, $20 a month or whatever it is for that. So this is then an exercise that has many conversations built into it. The first one on the top left there is housing. After I do this thing, graduate with my 4-year degree, am I still living at home? Am I paying for an apartment? Do I have roommates? What is that expense going to look like? Once you go from there, you start looking at cars and all the other lifestyle expectations. I have subscriptions in there because that's a big part of living today. And then you can see on the right-hand side, I've got loans and the student debt and the cost of $426 a month. And up in the top right, this thing has projected an actual in case you're running a monthly budget. But whichever column you use to calculate it, right now our teacher has $4 extra per month to handle any emergencies. So whether you go through this exercise and you come up with a ridiculously negative number or just a little bit negative number, some things to remember is, one, you need a cushion. You can't run that thing at $4 extra per month because you're gonna end up in an emergency. You also need to take each of the inputs as a separate variable. So what do I mean by that? So one variable is, where am I going to live? Oh, well, maybe in order to fix this, I'm going to talk to Mom and Dad about living with them for the next 5 years after I graduate. Oh, that's not good. I don't want to do that. All right, so let's go back. What if we live at home during college versus staying in the dorm? How does that change our loan payments? All right, what about going to the local college, going to, in the other example, going to Maryland State University versus going to Berkeley? How does that change the calculation? So all of these, are different variables that it's not going to come out with a correct answer, but it's going to come out with a conversation and an understanding and getting you to a place with whatever the student decides and whatever the family decides. Everyone's arrived there kind of looking at everything. So with that being said, there are going to be families that work through this conversation and they can't end up with the personal monthly budget working out. They've had all the talks, they've looked at all the variables, and none of those variables are acceptable to change to make the budget after graduation work. So is all lost? No. I do have at least one option. Well, I have two options. One is winning the lottery. Okay, that out now. The second one, and this is for those people that said, I don't care, it's my passion. And I get that. Money is not everything. In Financial Consulate, our values certainly line up with money is not everything. It's relationships that matter. But so you and your relationships have come to a place of, I don't care, it's my passion. What is one option for them? So there's a program called PSLF, Personal Service Loan Forgiveness. And to qualify for this, the loans, first off, they have to be federal loans. So it says here, have direct loans, can't be Parent Plus, can't be any of those other ones, just direct federal loans. Then you have to go to work for the federal government, the state government, local government, tribal government, or nonprofit organization, which and federal government can include the military. You got to work for them. You got to work full-time for them. You don't have to work with the same one forever. You can change them, but you have to be working with them. And while working with them, you repay your loans under the income-driven repayment plan. And this is a payment plan where the federal government says, all right, we will cap your loan payments at X% of your income. And then you go on that program and you keep making those payments based on X% of your income for the equivalent of 10 years, 120 qualifying payments. And once you do that, the federal government says, all right, we'll wipe the rest clean. So this might sound like a phenomenal answer to some of those people who have a passion, and maybe even that passion would have led them to work for nonprofits anyway. I want to say that I've actually seen in clients and in clients' children's, I've seen using this as the plan go incredibly wrong. And the most common way it goes incredibly wrong is, well, two ways. The first one is you're locked in to trying to work for one of these organizations, and that's going to limit your potential. So that's one problem. The other problem that I've seen more often is at some point you decide that you want to get married. Well, why would that affect anything? Well, the income-driven repayment plan is based on your household income. So if you get married, your spouse's income is considered in the income-based repayment plan. So, you know, you've been for the last 6 years making $35,000, $40,000, $45,000 a year working for your nonprofit. And all of a sudden you meet this great person and their plan has been different and they're making $200,000 a year at their job. This is great. We're going to live so much better life. Unfortunately, your income-driven repayment plan is now going to be based off of that $200,000 plus your $35,000, $40,000. So you'll be paying a percentage of $240,000, not a percentage of $40,000. I've seen it where the spouse didn't find out about this until they were making wedding plans, and you know, it can be a very difficult thing. So you have to accept, again, this is not about telling people that they have to calculate the highest return. They have to go for the highest salary jobs. This has nothing to do with that. What this is about is understanding your choice and making sure that everybody understands all the implications of it and having a plan for how to process through that. One of the other things that I don't want to get lost in this conversation is that I am not somebody who's going to stand up and say everyone shouldn't go to college. You know, if you've done this and you've got a plan, great, go to college. But I also don't want to be someone who ignores the many great alternatives. So, you know, starting to get some traction, and we talked about a little bit, there are a lot of professions out there that have a very low cost to entry. Not easy to enter, but low cost to enter. There are a lot of trades out there and careers where the education you go through is apprenticeships or a trade school that, you know, generally these trade schools kind of build themselves out so that, you know, the students are making a good return on that investment kind of right away. There's also starting a business or going to work for somebody in a business you really want to create. There's all kinds of options out there. Again, my overall point today is not to be the financial guy who comes on and says your, you know, money should be the main thing you're considering when choosing a college education, but it should be a significant item that you accept and understand and put time into making sure you understand the results and the likely impacts of those decisions. So I hope this has been a helpful conversation starter. I hope that anyone listening can enter conversations with their families and do so in a positive way, with a positive outlook and with understanding. So with that, I appreciate everyone joining me today, and hope that you got something out of this, and it serves good conversation. So we've got more webinars coming up. Look out for those. But with that, thank you for joining us.